We have Kiprop Kimutai, Nairobi-based writer who was shortlisted for the Miles Morland Scholarship, the James Baldwin Writer-in-Residence. Kiprop naona uko na mafans tayari. The Gerald Kraak Award, and he was the second runners-up for the Kwani Manuscript Project for his manuscript, The Water Spirits. Could you kindly give us a brief synopsis of your story? Very brief, and then from there you can do your reading.
First of all, I just want to appreciate each one of you for coming here to listen to us read and for buying our stories. So my name is Kiprop Kimutai. I wrote A Stranger in St. Paul de Vence, and it's basically about being in this small village. I went for a residence in the village that James Baldwin spent the last 2 decades of his life. So it's more a reflection of trying to walk through his footsteps to see how he took up space in this very conservative part of France, and also my own experiences there as well as an African in a conservative part of France. So it's a nice read. I walked on past the dry riverbed and up its other side. I thrust through an endlessness of shrubs, marveling how I was all alone in the forest. I felt a mischievous thrill that I was an African walking by myself in the wilds of Europe, but the forest was deceiving and tiring, leading me to what seemed to be its end, only to repeat itself. More trees, more winding paths to walk through. Finally, I saw a windmill and an old house, and I walked to it. Past it was the tarmac road, which was wide and seemed to lead on, and definitely not to Tourette's. I walked along till I discovered a footpath that ran against it to a section of run-down houses with goats tied outside and chickens clucking about. I looked up and saw Tourette's, rising with postcard picture gloriousness on a jutting piece of rock with a wondrous, fairly complete Roman aqueduct reaching towards it from the valley beside the rock. But I couldn't, for the life of me, see a path that would lead me to it. I retraced my steps and meandered about, hoping I had enough of a repository of French to ask for directions. I saw a woman step out of a gate, and I shouted a bonjour at her, followed by a request in halting and obviously terrible French on how I could get to Tourette's. She froze and stepped back inside her gate, closing it. I wondered if she was scared of seeing a black man, as a number of people had generously been in one Parisian night. But then she opened the gate and walked out with a tall black man with long, grayed locks of hair. The man walked to me and said he spoke little English, gesturing negatively with his hands. We tried what we could once more, speaking over our phones, which marvelously failed with the translations. A young girl of secondary school age, and presumably the woman's daughter, walked over. She said she was now learning English in school and could listen to me better. But she was yet to learn enough English to direct someone lost outside her home and wanting to get to Tourette's. Finally, the man gestured the act of turning on the engine to a bike and said repeatedly, "Scooter, scooter." I nodded avidly, and minutes later, I was behind him on his scooter as he winded up the tarmac road, round and round, till we reached the rocky rampart where the passage leading inside Tourette's stood. He parked his scooter and pointed at the town, saying in English, "This is what you want." The man folded his hands and stepped closer, asking me where I was from. His hair was gray, but he looked youthful and fit. He seemed beyond age, as if, as we say in Kenya, he had eaten life enough to stand outside its silly timelines. I told him I was from Kenya, and he asked if I had heard of Martinique, and I said said that's where he was from. He paused before gesturing a sign of openness with his hands and told me the fact I was Kenyan and he from Martinique didn't matter. We are African, black people, and lifting one finger, one country.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful passage, and I appreciate that you selected it. So, just looking back at you writing this story, you're granted this prestigious residency given to black writers across the world who write in the spirit of James Baldwin. And I must say, having read your work, you do write in the spirit of James Baldwin, and you also do write in the style of James Baldwin. Now, the question is, how did the Baldwin residency and, interacting with the people who knew Baldwin and connecting with his writings and his perspectives on race and identity, how did this influence your own responses to the subtle and overt racism that you faced there?
Well, I think it was a beautiful experience getting to meet people who called Baldwin a friend, in the sense that all my life, we've all seen Baldwin and we see him on YouTube, on TV and whatnot, and is this intellectual, like, snapping back at people with like very intelligent arguments. But then you meet people who drank with him, sang with him, met the guy who translated his telegrams, this young lady who would kind of aid him when he was walking back home, maybe a little drunk. So he became human to me. But then at the same time, he was also large, like, he passed on like in the 80s, but people in that town still remember him fondly. So somehow as a black man coming from a foreign country, coming to France, learning French, and being loved. He was actually loved by the people in that village, and it just made me wonder what kind of a person he was to be able to take space that way. Because for me, I kind of wallowed in self-pity because I felt my smallness a lot. And to sort of just imagine that Baldwin was here. He was different from me, but okay, we share the same skin color. I kind of just had an imagination of how I could possibly move around and come into myself, despite everything around me trying to make me feel small.
And you vividly described moments of connection and disconnection with the locals. I mean, the passage you read right now is a beautiful example of the connection that you had from the gentleman from Martinique, and how, no matter where we are in the world, we're black people, we're Africans, we're one people, right? But there are also moments of disconnect, moments that you mentioned in this piece where, you're trying to catch a train and someone just snubs you based on the color of your skin and whatnot. So the question is, how did these experiences of seeing the same locals in the same places, shape your understanding of community and isolation in a foreign land?
First of all, I would say that I had very many beautiful experiences. This wasn't like a sad experience overall. I met so many wonderful people, and I guess what allowed me to meet people was that I walked a lot. I kind of just wanted to understand the geography around me. If there's a hill, I climb it. If it's to go to the ocean, I go to the ocean. And I can't exactly remember your question, but but I walked a lot.
How important is it for a writer to double as a flaneur from time to time?
I think it's essential in the sense that landscape is integral to story because we exist in physical spaces. We have our consciousness and our metaphysical, but the physical space, the dust, the ground, the trees, the roads, the people, everything around you, you're a human in a body, and that body has to exist in a physical space. So for you to write and reinterpret the world, you have to understand that you are there as a body moving through a physical space. So I always try to walk around in whichever space I'm in, because I think that's essential to even understanding everything that is internal. I have to see everything that is external. It kind of creates a structure for me.